In a luxurious restaurant, the sound of cutlery mingles with the discreet murmurs of the patrons. The scene is elegant, but it soon transforms into a cruel spectacle when an elderly couple, dressed modestly, is publicly humiliated by the owner of the establishment. The young Aiden, witnessing the situation, stands up. His firm voice cuts through the oppressive atmosphere, challenging not only the authoritarianism but also the social conventions of that place. What he did not know was that this simple act of courage would trigger a series of events that would change his life forever, and the most unexpected consequence was about to be revealed. Aiden had never liked injustices, but on that particular night, his sense of justice would be put to the test in a way he could never have imagined. The restaurant he was in, known for its sophistication and selective clientele, did not seem like the type of place where an unpleasant scene could occur. However, fate had other plans. From a distance, he discreetly observed an elderly couple who had just entered. Emily and Henry, with tired expressions but maintaining a silent dignity, chose a table away from others. The contrast between their simple clothes and the luxurious environment was evident, but they did not seem uncomfortable. However, discomfort soon came from another direction. Mason, the arrogant owner of the restaurant, approached with a look of disdain. Without even bothering to hide it, he made a sarcastic comment about how people like them did not belong in that place. Henry's gaze dropped, while Emily tried to muster a smile to ease the tension, but Mason's sharp words cut through any attempt to alleviate the situation. He accused them of being unable to afford the meal and insinuated that they were only there to observe the luxury they could never attain. Aiden's blood boiled. He could not simply watch this humiliation unfold. His instincts spoke louder, and before he knew it, he was already on his feet, walking toward the couple's table. His presence, young and determined, interrupted Mason's cruel stream of words. "They don't have to prove anything to you," Aiden said, his voice resonating firmly through the hall. "And I will pay for their meal." Mason turned to Aiden with a look of surprise and irritation. "You don't know who you're dealing with, kid. This isn't the kind of place where someone like you can just play the hero." Aiden did not back down. "And you clearly don't know what respect means." The entire restaurant seemed to have stopped to watch the confrontation. Emily and Henry's eyes sparkled with a mix of gratitude and surprise. Aiden took out his wallet and placed several bills on the table, far more than enough to cover their bill. "This is what you owe them," Aiden said, looking directly at Mason. "And I suggest you start treating people with dignity, or you will lose much more than just a customer." Mason, embarrassed, walked away in anger, muttering threats under his breath. Aiden turned to the couple, offering a reassuring smile. "Are you okay?" Emily nodded, her voice soft but laden with emotion. "You saved us from a great humiliation. We have no words to thank you." Henry, still processing what had happened, shook Aiden's hand firmly. "We don't forget those who show true courage. We would like you to visit us tomorrow night if you can. We would like to thank you properly." Aiden, still recovering from the adrenaline of the moment, agreed without thinking much. Something in the couple's eyes told him there was more to this story than he could perceive at that moment. However, he had no idea what awaited him. When the next night arrived, Aiden headed to the address Henry had given him. He expected a modest home, perhaps a small family dinner. But when he arrived, he found himself in front of a huge mansion, surrounded by immaculate gardens. Confused, Aiden hesitated before ringing the doorbell. When the door opened, he was greeted by a butler who led him to a luxurious room. Emily and Henry awaited him with warm smiles. The simple appearances in the restaurant contrasted sharply with the opulence of the environment he now found himself in. Before he could formulate a question, Emily invited him to sit down. "You must be wondering what's going on, Aiden," Henry said with a serious but gentle look. "But what happened yesterday was not by chance." Aiden looked around, trying to understand. You live here? Emily nodded. Yes. And the truth is that we are not just an elderly couple. We have worked our entire lives to build something meaningful. But now, we are ready to pass it on, Henry continued. We are looking for someone worthy to inherit all of this, someone with integrity, courage, and compassion. And yesterday you showed those qualities in a way we haven't seen in a long time. Aiden blinked, incredulous. You want me to inherit all of this? Emily smiled. We're not just talking about money, Aiden. We want you to help us continue our work, our philanthropic initiatives. It's not an easy task, and it's something that must be done with heart. Aiden's heart raced. The proposal was tempting, but also intimidating. He had spent his life guided by his values, but he had never imagined he would be placed in a position like this. I don't know what to say, Aiden stammered, trying to process the enormity of the offer. Just say you'll help us make a difference, Henry said, looking deeply into Aiden's eyes. Aiden knew this was one of those life-changing opportunities, and despite the fear of the unknown, he felt he couldn't let this chance slip away. Even without having all the answers, he knew that accepting meant embarking on a journey that would demand everything from him. But that could also bring something he had always sought, a greater purpose. With a determined nod, Aiden replied, I accept. I will do my best to honor what you have built. What Aiden couldn't foresee was that this decision would be the beginning of a path filled with challenges, surprises, and transformations that would test each of the qualities Emily and Henry had seen in him. Aiden barely had time to absorb the magnitude of the decision he had made before he was immediately thrust into a new and complex world. Emily and Henry wasted no time. The next day, he was introduced to the major philanthropic projects that the couple had been conducting for decades. The impact of these initiatives was profound, but the magnitude of the responsibility that now rested on him was something Aiden was just beginning to understand. He found himself in meetings with business leaders, planning strategies to expand aid to underserved communities, and navigating the bureaucracy involved in substantial donations. Aiden had never dealt with this kind of pressure. Before, his life had been simple, but now he was in the midst of decisions that would affect thousands of lives. And it wasn't just the responsibility weighing on his shoulders, but also the distrust he felt around him. Samuel, one of the Foundation's longest-serving employees, who had worked alongside Henry for years, seemed particularly resistant to Aiden's presence. During a meeting, Samuel made a point of stating what he thought. With all due respect, Aiden, you may be their chosen one, but that doesn't mean you're prepared to lead something of this magnitude. I've worked with Henry from the beginning, and I know how much he sacrificed for this. Frankly, I don't see how someone so young and inexperienced can understand what's at stake here. Aiden felt the sting of the words, but he kept his composure. He knew Samuel was partly right. He was young and inexperienced, but that didn't diminish his determination to do the work correctly. I understand your concerns, Samuel, and I'm not here to replace anyone. My goal is to learn from you all and continue Henry and Emily's legacy in the best way possible. I know it won't be easy, but I'm committed to doing my best. Samuel didn't respond, but his hard gaze indicated that he was still not convinced. This only made Aiden feel more pressured. He needed to prove to everyone that he was up to the task, but above all, he needed to prove to himself that he hadn't made a mistake by accepting this responsibility. The first few days were exhausting. Aiden found himself caught between the need to adapt quickly and the reality that time was not on his side. He studied reports late into the night, trying to understand every detail of the projects that were now under his supervision. The complexity of the operations, the number of lives depending on these initiatives, and the expectations weighing on him began to take a toll. One day, after a particularly difficult meeting where his ideas were criticized, Aiden left the office feeling completely drained. Emily noticed his distress and called him over to talk. "I know this is a lot for you, Aiden," she said, sitting down next to him in the garden of the mansion. "But Henry and I saw something special in you. It's not just about skill or experience, but about heart and character. We believe in you." Aiden sighed, looking out at the horizon. "I just don't want to let you down. There are so many people who trust in what you've built, and I don't want to fail." Emily placed her hand over his, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "You're not alone in this. We're here to guide you, and we know you can do it. But remember, Aiden, leadership isn't about never making mistakes. It's about learning and moving forward despite the mistakes." These words touched Aiden deeply. He knew the expectations were high, but he couldn't let fear paralyze him. He would have to keep going, facing each challenge that arose, and prove to both Samuel and himself that he was up to the task. But as Aiden struggled to adapt to his new role, a much more personal and painful problem was about to infiltrate his life. Ella, his girlfriend, began to complain of extreme fatigue and constant pain. Initially, Aiden thought it might just be stress or a common cold, but as the symptoms persisted and worsened, his concern grew. After a series of medical exams, the diagnosis hit him like a punch to the gut. Ella was seriously ill, and the news shook Aiden in a way he didn't expect. Suddenly, the pressure from work, the doubts, and the challenges with the foundation seemed small compared to the possibility of losing the person he loved most. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Aiden split his time between the hospital and the responsibilities he had taken on. He tried to be there for Ella, supporting her through appointments, taking care of her, but he also needed to deal with the increasing demands of the foundation. Physical and emotional exhaustion began to take its toll, and Aiden felt as if he were being pulled in every direction. During a hospital visit, Ella called him over to talk, her voice weak but filled with sincerity. "Aiden, I don't want to be a burden to you," she said, holding his hand. "You have so much to do, and I know how much this opportunity means to you. Maybe it's better if you step back a little." Her words hit Aiden like a blow to the heart. The idea of distancing himself from Ella at a time when she needed him most was unbearable. But at the same time, he knew something had to change. He couldn't keep splitting himself this way without sacrificing something, either his work or his relationship. When Emily and Henry learned about Ella's situation, they were more than understanding. Henry was the first to speak. "Aiden, we understand what you're going through. If you need some time, we're here to hold down the fort." But Aiden knew he couldn't just step away. He had made a commitment, and he couldn't ignore the responsibilities that came with it. However, he also knew he couldn't let Ella face this battle alone. The dilemma consumed him, and the nights became endless as he tried to find a way to balance everything. And it was in that moment of absolute vulnerability that Emily and Henry showed how deeply they cared for Aiden. They offered him all the possible support, both emotional and financial, to ensure that Ella received the best treatment available. This gesture of kindness and solidarity touched Aiden profoundly. He increasingly realized that Emily and Henry didn't just see him as a successor, but as part of their family. With this new help, Aiden managed to organize his time better. He began to find a tenuous balance between caring for Ella and fulfilling his obligations at the foundation. Emily's words echoed in his mind. Leadership is not about never making mistakes. It's about continuing despite the mistakes. But deep down, Aiden knew this fragile balance couldn't last forever. And as he fought to keep everything in order, an unexpected tragedy was about to shake him even more deeply. Aiden began to feel that he was slowly managing to balance the responsibilities of the foundation with caring for Ella. With the support of Emily and Henry, he believed he was finally on the right track, even in the face of so many adversities. However, life had dark plans that he could never foresee. One afternoon, while reviewing some documents in the foundation's office, Aiden received a call that chilled his blood. The voice on the other end was Samuel's, But this time there was no suspicion or criticism in his words, just a grave and contained tone. "Aiden, I need you to come to the hospital immediately. There's been an accident." Aiden dropped everything and raced to the hospital. His heart was pounding, a mix of fear and denial taking hold of his mind. Upon arrival, a nurse led him to the emergency room. Samuel was there, his eyes downcast and his expression heavy with a sadness Aiden had never seen before. Emily and Henry were on their way to a meeting when there was a car accident. They didn't survive. The words hit Aiden like a devastating wave. It felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. He staggered, needing to lean against the wall to avoid falling. His mind couldn't process the information. Emily and Henry, the two people who had trusted him, who had become like parents, were dead. Just like that. And now, Aiden was taken to a private room where the bodies were covered with white sheets. He hesitated before approaching, but he knew he had to do this. When he lifted the sheet and saw the serene faces of Emily and Henry, tears streamed down his face. They had left so suddenly, without warning, leaving him with an immense void and an even greater responsibility. After what felt like hours, Aiden stepped back, still in shock. He had to be strong, but at that moment, all he felt was overwhelming pain and the sensation of being completely lost. In the following days, Aiden was caught up in a whirlwind of decisions and formalities. Emily and Henry's funeral was an intimate event, with only a few people present, as they had wished. Aiden stood beside the coffins, feeling the weight of the loss and the responsibility that now rested solely on him. The pain of loss was accompanied by the fear of not living up to the legacy that Emily and Henry had left for him. Even in the midst of grief, Aiden knew he needed to move forward. He had promised them that he would continue the work, that he would honor everything they had built. But the reality was overwhelming. The future felt like a lonely road filled with obstacles that he wasn't sure he could overcome. As Aiden tried to cope with the grief and the new responsibilities, an unexpected figure reappeared in his life. Mason, the arrogant owner of the now-failed restaurant, showed up at the foundation one day, asking to speak with him. Aiden felt a mix of anger and disdain upon seeing him. Mason was the embodiment of everything he despised: arrogance, cruelty, and a lack of respect. What could that man possibly want now? "Aiden," Mason began, his voice laden with a humility that Aiden had never heard before. "I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I had to come here. I lost everything. My restaurant, my businesses, my reputation. Everything went down the drain after what happened." Aiden crossed his arms, watching Mason with suspicion. "And why do you think that matters to me?" Mason sighed, his shoulders slumped in a gesture of defeat. "I did terrible things, treated people in ways I shouldn't have, and I paid dearly for it. But I'm here because I know I need to change. I want to help. I want to be part of something meaningful, and I heard that you are leading the foundation now." Aiden couldn't believe what he was hearing. That man, who had publicly humiliated Emily and Henry, was now standing before him, asking for a second chance. Aiden's initial impulse was to reject Mason immediately, to send him away. But something in Mason's tone, in the way he presented himself, made Aiden hesitate. There was sincerity there, a genuine remorse he hadn't expected to see. "You want to redeem yourself by helping at the foundation?" Aiden asked, still skeptical. Mason nodded. "I know I can't erase what I did, but I want to try to do something good, even if it's small. Please, let me help. I just want a chance." Aiden struggled internally with the decision. Forgiving Mason wouldn't be easy, and accepting his help felt like an insult to Emily and Henry's memory. But at the same time, Aiden knew that forgiveness was one of the cornerstones of everything the foundation stood for. Perhaps by giving Mason a second chance, he would be honoring the values Emily and Henry had taught him. After a long silence, Aiden finally replied. "All right. I will give you a chance, Mason. But know that I will be watching you. I won't tolerate any slip-ups." Mason lowered his head, grateful. "Thank you, Aiden. I promise I won't let you down." With that, Aiden assigned Mason a simple task, something that wouldn't require too much responsibility. It was a start, but it was also a test. Aiden knew that many at the Foundation would look at this with suspicion, just as he was doing. But he decided it was worth the risk. As Aiden navigated this new dynamic, he also found himself immersed in new opportunities that arose after Emily and Henry's death. During an education conference, he met Sebastian Thompson, an influential philanthropist who became deeply interested in the educational projects the Foundation was developing. Sebastian was a visionary, with a genuine passion for improving the education system. He and Aiden spent hours discussing ideas, exchanging experiences, and sharing visions for the future. Aiden felt an immediate connection, as if Sebastian could be the partner he needed to expand the projects and reach even more people. "Aiden," Sebastian said at the end of the conference, "I see a lot of potential in what you are doing. If you're willing, I would love to collaborate with you and see how far we can take these projects. I believe that together, we can do something extraordinary." This offer brought a wave of enthusiasm to Aiden. It was exactly what he needed: a new energy, a new perspective, someone to share the weight of his responsibilities with. He knew that this partnership could elevate the Foundation to a new level, but he also understood that he had to be careful not to lose sight of the values that Emily and Henry held dear. With the decision to forgive Mason and the new partnership with Sebastian firmly established, Aiden felt that he was, in some way, finding his way again. The grief and pain were still present, but he began to realize that even in the absence of Emily and Henry, he was not alone. The people around him, those he chose to forgive and those he chose to bring closer, were beginning to form the support network he so desperately needed. But as Aiden prepared for new challenges and opportunities, he knew that the journey was far from over. The past had a way of reappearing, bringing with it old ghosts that he would need to confront in order to finally find the peace he so longed for. Aiden knew that Henry's letter represented more than just words of encouragement. It was the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. With it in hand, he felt as if a new flame had been ignited within him, a renewed commitment not only to the legacy of Emily and Henry, but to his own future. Over time, Ella began to show signs of recovery. The battles they faced together, both personal and professional, had strengthened the bond between them. Aiden not only managed to expand the Foundation's educational projects, but also found in Sebastian Thompson a loyal ally who shared the same passion for making a difference. Everything seemed to finally be falling into place. On a quiet afternoon, Aiden and Ella decided to take some time for themselves. With the turbulence of the previous months, they had rarely had the chance to simply be together, without external worries or pressures. Aiden remembered a special place mentioned by Emily in one of their conversations, a country house that she and Henry used to visit to find peace and tranquility. "Let's go there," Ella suggested when Aiden mentioned the place. "It seems like the perfect spot for the two of us right now." They traveled to the country house, located in a secluded area surrounded by lush nature. The place was even more beautiful than Aiden had imagined, with green fields, leafy trees, and a small pond reflecting the blue sky. Upon entering the house, they felt the presence of Emily and Henry in every detail, as if the spirit of the couple were still there, watching over them. The days that followed were peaceful and filled with simple yet meaningful moments. Aiden and Ella spent hours talking by the pond, hiking through the fields, and simply enjoying each other's company. It was a period of healing, both for Ella and for Aiden, who still carried the weight of the losses and changes that had occurred in his life. One morning, while exploring the house, Aiden found a small chest hidden in one of the cabinets. Curious, he opened it and discovered more letters, old photos of Emily and Henry, and a journal. As he flipped through the journal, he found that Henry had documented his thoughts during the last years of his life, including the decision to choose Aidan as his successor. In one of the entries, Henry wrote about the moment when he and Emily realized that Aidan was the right person to carry on their legacy. Emily and I have seen something special in Aidan since the first time we met him. He has an innate kindness, a courage that cannot be taught. We know he will face challenges, but we believe he has the heart and determination to overcome them. We leave everything in his hands, confident that our work will be in good hands. Aidan felt a wave of emotions as he read those words. Once again, Henry and Emily reaffirmed their trust in him, and it gave him a peace he had long sought. It was as if, even after death, they were still guiding his steps, assuring him that he was not alone. Ella entered the room while Aidan was reading the journal, and he shared with her what he had found. She held his hand, feeling the depth of the moment. "They really believed in you, Aidan, and they were right. Look how much you've accomplished." Aidan smiled, feeling more connected to Ella than ever. "I wouldn't have made it without you by my side, Ella. You are the strength that keeps me standing." Ella smiled and kissed him gently. "And I wouldn't have gotten through all of this without you. Now, we're here, together, and that's all that matters." The days at the country house were like a balm for their souls. Aidan and Ella talked about the future, about how to further expand Emily and Henry's legacy, and about the dreams they had for themselves. It was during one of those conversations that Aidan made a decision that had been maturing in his heart for some time. "Ella," he said, looking into her eyes, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know we've faced more than most couples do in a lifetime, and that only makes me more certain that I want you by my side forever." He took out a simple but significant ring that he had bought during one of his trips to expand the foundation. "Will you marry me?" Ella laughed, tears of happiness welling in her eyes. "Yes, Aidan, I accept. There's nothing I want more than this." They embraced, and in that moment, all the difficulties, losses, and uncertainties seemed distant. What remained was the love that united them and the certainty that they were ready to face the future together, no matter what came their way. The wedding was simple and intimate, held at the country house, with Sebastian and a few close friends as witnesses. It was a celebration of love, life, and the legacy that Aidan and Ella were determined to carry on. Months later, Aidan returned to work with a new vigor. The foundation was growing, educational projects were expanding into new regions, and Aidan became a respected leader, known for his integrity and dedication. Ella, by his side, was becoming healthier, and they began to talk about starting a family, something that now seemed possible and close. Years later, Aidan would be remembered as one of the greatest philanthropists of his generation, a man who transformed pain into purpose and dedicated his life to doing good, inspired by the legacy of Emily and Henry. He and Ella had a daughter who grew up hearing stories about the adoptive grandparents she never met, but whose love and generosity shaped her parents' lives. On a sunny afternoon, Aidan and Ella took their daughter to visit Emily and Henry's grave. They placed fresh flowers and spent a few minutes in silence, reflecting on everything that had happened. "They gave us so much," Aidan said softly, looking at the gravestone. "And all we can do is keep giving back." Ella held his hand and smiled. "And that's exactly what we will do, Aidan. Always." As they walked away from the cemetery, Aidan looked back one last time, feeling a deep peace. The legacy of Emily and Henry lived on, not only in the projects he led, but also in the love that now guided his own life. Aidan knew that the future would still bring challenges, but with Ella and their daughter by his side, he was ready to face them. The cycle had closed, and now it was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with hope, love, and the promise of an eternal legacy. We hope you enjoyed this narrative. Please help by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss more touching stories that resonate with the soul. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. Thanks and feedback are also welcome. We'll see you in the next exciting video. Until then,